Preparing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Immigrant Podcast with Robinson. This time it is live. It's live, and we expect a lot of people to be joining. And we have James with us tonight. Welcome, James.
Good evening. Welcome. Thank you.
So, James, we are going to be talking about business, entrepreneurship, and much more. But let me introduce you a little bit to the audience that's going to be joining us tonight.
Sure.
I read that you are a published author, and your book is called Entrepreneurial Essentials: Unconventional Business Wisdom and Bold Tactics.
Correct.
You are a graduate student from 3 different universities, not one: McGill, Cornell, and Sherbrooke. So you've been studying a lot. And apparently you have lived and conducted businesses in at least 3 different countries, right?
Including Canada, that's right.
Including Canada. And you've been involved in different domains: yacht, brokerage, food and beverage, financial services, and so on and so forth. I would like to start this interview by asking you, how do you define yourself? What do you do, and why do you enjoy it so much?
Sure. To begin with, I consider myself a solutions provider. I enjoy when somebody throws me a challenge, and I've tried to figure out how to solve an issue, any pain point, especially when it comes to business. I may not have all the answers, but I'm the type of person who's relentlessly competitive, and the type of person who's always seeking ways to solve an issue. That's how I get my high, my natural high, my kicks out of life. Besides being a solution provider, I also enjoy sharing my experiences and my knowledge with others who care to learn. So I'm an educator.
And you've been doing this for how long?
I've been an educator, a business educator now for 12 years.
12 years. And in those 12 years, I'm thinking that you've been teaching mainly to immigrants. What would be the percentage among immigrants and Canadians?
Good question. I began mostly with locals, teaching locals. And then over the years, I started teaching more and more to immigrants, whether it's from Egypt, the Philippines, Iran, Russia, Latin America. I've taught them all.
Perfect. I would like to know why some immigrants decide to wait for many, many, many years to start their businesses. And the question is because I already know people that had businesses in their countries. They come here and they're a little afraid to start a business. Why is that?
Well, it's because they're intimidated by our system. They're not familiar with it, and they want to Canadianize themselves, so to speak. Just like employers are asking for people who have Canadian experience. When you're an immigrant, that's one factor. The other reason is because they haven't established themselves adequately for them to be able to take a swim in the business world on their own, and it's more difficult for them to receive funding because they have not been here for a good number of years.
That's true. That's correct. You mentioned something that I had to go through, and I believe most immigrants have to go through when we come to Canada. And we feel like it was a lie when we apply through the permanent residence process and all that, because once we get here, that's the first thing that we get from employers. You don't have the Canadian experience. You are a first generation Canadian. How do you answer that when an employer basically comes up with that?
Well, we need to first define what Canadian experience means. Does it mean that you don't know the ways or the system or the mentality of business locally? Is it that we don't speak the language? They don't speak the language properly, or is it a combination of all of the above? Once they can define what Canadian experience means, then we need to delve into finding out what it is that stops someone who comes from another country with his or her knowledge and experience to be able to apply it in our system. In other words, to complement what he or she has into our system.
Very good. That's right. So let's go right into the meat of the podcast tonight. What is the roadmap to starting a business in Canada? That's what we're here for.
The roadmap, I wouldn't say it's only applies to Canada. It's universal, but it's a type of process that most people in the U.S. and Canada know or aware of when it comes to starting a business. The first thing you do is you come up with a viable idea for a product or service. You have to have fire in the belly and believe in that particular product or service. Then once you decide that this is what you want to do or want to sell in the business, you need to decide and figure out through research who your target market is going to be. Once you determine your target market, then you start working on your business model, your business plan. You try to figure out what the logistics, the licenses or permits that you need, and then you go into your marketing research and plan, and you come up with a branding, a name, slogan, vision, mission, and hopefully by then you'll also be working on getting the required funding. And once that's done, and you put everything together, in theory, you should be able to launch your business.
This is, I believe, something a little bit of a crossroad, if I were to order it this way. Business plan versus action. I think a lot of people spend a long period of time just working on the business plan, and that could go on and on and on, and they could spend months or even years just developing this business plan, but they never take action. What's your approach? What's your advice?
My advice is like any strategy, because a business plan is your strategy that you're laying out for your prospective business. You need to know how to put that plan into action. You need to know how to execute it. Without execution, all you have is just ink on a piece of paper. It means nothing. Someone who has a lot of fantastic ideas and who doesn't apply them, we have that expression, ideas are worth a dime a dozen.
Sure.
You need to take action, as you said, in order for you to begin reaping the benefits of what you put on paper.
Very good. And before we start a business, I know there are basically 3 different entities that we can start a business with. And it is a decision that we need to make based on either the money that we have available, if we want to partner with somebody else, if we want to probably pay less taxes. What are these 3 entities, and could you expand on those 3?
Sure. So we have the sole proprietorship, which is the easiest and least expensive way to start a business. And you have, very few steps that you need to take in order for you to register a business so that you can conduct it legally, right? In Quebec, we have the NEQ, Numéro d'entreprise de Québec, also known in English as a enterprise business number. And it's a 9-digit number. And with that, you know that you're starting a legitimate business by having the NEQ. So to apply for the NEQ, you have to register either as a sole proprietor or a general partnership, meaning you, instead of going in it alone, you're going to have at least one or more partners. So that would be considered registering a general partnership.
Okay.
Then once you've registered your business, if you decide that you want to take it to the next level, meaning that you want to be able to expand and you want to be taken more seriously, especially when it comes to potential investors and funding from the bank, you should consider incorporation. An incorporation is a lot more expensive. It takes a bit more time. You can do it on your own, but it's highly advisable that you use an attorney. And then you get to choose. You need to choose if you're going to do a provincial incorporation or a federal. What's the difference? In the provincial, you can only conduct. You usually have you're going to be conducting business only within the province. But if you choose the federal incorporation, you can do business nationwide, which means that if you decide to open up an office in another province, you don't need to incorporate in that province, right? Because the federal incorporation is a blanket, nationwide blanket. You can open up as many offices and as many territories as you wish, and you're pretty much covered with the federal incorporation. Now, you can have you can own it on your own, or you can have one or more partners. In that case, it's called a limited partnership. So it's an incorporation, except that you have one or more partners. You see the distinction? When you incorporate it and you have one or more partners, it's called a limited partnership. But if you are only registered and you want at least one or more partners, then it's called a general partnership.
So the easiest one is a sole proprietorship.
It's a
That's the easiest one to start with.
Yes,
but the one you get the most protection from is a corporation, correct?
Yes, because you have limited liability. You see, if you get sued, they don't sue you personally if you have an incorporation. They go after your entity, your company. And
so the corporation becomes basically another person.
Correct. In other words, you, the owner, and the business are separate. Whereas as a sole proprietor, you are the business. So if there's a lawsuit, they're going to come after you, the individual who owns the sole proprietorship, and they can seize your personal assets, whether it's your home, car, or any other valuables that you own.
So you want to be protected. But a lot of people still run dépanneurs, like grocery stores, and other businesses under their own personal name, sole proprietors, correct?
Yes, they do, because they don't have to file corporate taxes every year. They don't have to, they don't get scrutinized as much as if they're simply just a registered business. And since you only own one dépanneur, one convenience store, it's not worth the hassle to incorporate.
And you still get to deduct all the expenses.
You still get to deduct all the expenses, but you have to add your revenues on top of any other salary that you've already declared.
Correct.
For example, if you're working for a company and you are running the dépanneur on the side, you would take the revenues from the dépanneur and add them on top of your salary from work. But the only difference is that you can deduct the business expenses, which means you fall under a different tax margin.
As a sole proprietor.
As a sole proprietor.
Correct. What do you think is better for an immigrant to start a business from zero, or to buy one that has been out there for a year or a few years already?
There's no blanket answer because it depends on the person's needs, desires, and the amount of personal funding he or she wants to invest. You actually have three choices: either start a business from scratch, buy a franchise, or buy an existing business.
Franchises are very expensive.
It depends what type of franchise you buy, but the franchise is a turnkey operation. You basically you're given everything on a silver platter. However, there's a price to pay for that, right?
Of course.
I have an analogy with franchises. I like to say that the franchise is like buying yourself a job.
That's funny. I think so. I agree.
Right, because you can't change anything.
You're not
given,
free.
That's right. You're told what you have to follow the operations manual, right? It's very structured.
It is.
Yes.
What are some of the websites that we can go to if we want to buy a running business? I usually go to Centuries, but I don't know if you know others. You probably know others.
Yes. If you don't want to deal with brokers, you can go to a website, which is actually a French printing company, that publishing company that created almost a decade ago. And it's called acquisition.biz, as in B-I-Z. And acquisition is not spelled with an S, it's spelled with a Z. So acquisition.biz.
And that is
And that is basically like
Canada based or globally?
It's nationwide, Canada based. And there you get to choose. They have drop down menus for the type of industry or the type of the area you'd like to own the business, the amount that you're looking to invest, and then it gives you a whole a list of businesses based on your search. And you're dealing directly with the sellers, with the owners of the business. There's no middleman.
Let's say you want to do that. Let's say you want to buy a business. I don't know. I have this idea of maybe a laundromat. How would you approach that sale? And I mean, you're trying to buy the business. How would you do it? Because in my case, I'm thinking, I would just drive around the place, see if there are a lot of people walking by, if there's a lot of traffic. How would you go about buying that business?
That's one way. Another way is to also ask the clients that come out of the shop, what they think of the business, how long it's been around, have they seen anything unusual, and then you do your due diligence. In other words, you involve an attorney and a good accountant, and they will also guide you and find any red flags regarding the business. If the owner tells you what I'm showing you as my revenues and profits are not necessarily true, because I also do a lot of cash transaction on the side, I'd be very careful about investing in that business.
And what would be your ROI, return on investment? Let's say I invest $100,000 a day. When do you expect yourself, in general, to get that money back?
I would like to get my money back within maximum, 7 years. I would say between 5 and 7 years, but maximum 7 years. And again, it all depends on what type of industry. In some industries you can get your money back in 3 years, some in 5, others in 7, and others much more than that. But it all depends on how much you paid for the business versus how much the revenues are.
What do you think about the food industry? Because you've been there. I'm thinking more about, small businesses, like, again, you buy a grocery store or you open a restaurant, all this. I look at it and I'm like, it's very time consuming. What do you think about it? Because you've been there.
Yeah, those are very tough businesses to get into. In fact, those are businesses that banks they're not fond of giving out loans. You see, they're pretty much on the gray or black list of banks, unless it's a franchise. That helps if you want to get into the food business or a retail business, but through a franchise, a proven system. But if you're starting one from scratch, even if you have the best business plan put together, the banks are not crazy about lending money to those type of businesses because they have a very high failure rate. They're very difficult businesses. Not to mention that the hours are overwhelming. You're pretty much living in your business.
You should just get a bed and put it there. I agree with that. I spent 6 weeks working with an uncle of mine many years ago in New Jersey. He has a grocery store, and I believe we woke up at 5 a.m. We made it home around midnight. The next day, the same. And I was like, oh my God, this is like being in prison.
It's not a glamorous lifestyle.
It is not. If they have a very good spot, I believe they make good money, but it's not a very good lifestyle. There's no work-life balance.
That, and you also have to consider, are you able to scale that business? Can you take it to the next level? Can you open up more of the same? Can you franchise it?
True. So I want to touch on franchises, but I'm going to ask you first. Due to COVID, we have to think, at least our generation right now, we'll have to think about what businesses to get into, because what happens if there's another COVID? What are kind of the safe havens when we talk about businesses that we should kind of get into that you think?
I always advise my students and potential entrepreneurs that they should open up a business which is both pandemic resistant or pandemic proof, or recession resistant or recession proof. For example, we know by now, having gone through COVID-19 back in 2020, which businesses suffered the most. Those are the businesses you don't want to get involved. You don't want to get into.
And I think we already have the experience, so we could just go back to those COVID years and see that mainly restaurants had a very hard time during COVID, unless they came up with something very innovative or creative.
Except for fast food restaurants, which were able to also use delivery services like Uber. So if someone wants to get into a restaurant business because he or she has a passion for food, they shouldn't consider a dining / service type of restaurant. They should consider a fast food with delivery.
That's a good approach. So let me go back to franchises, because you've mentioned franchises many times in this conversation. Which ones are the cheapest? Because I don't know them. You are in the market. You are teaching in the classes. You are exposed to this. Which ones are the cheapest? Because I already know the most expensive ones, like McDonald's and the bread place. What is it called? That just got sold. No, where you go and get your vegetables from, and you get it from there. Very famous. It just got sold a couple of months ago, I would say. And it's actually the one with the most franchises in the whole world. You know, you have Subway, correct. Subway.
Subway is one of the least expensive franchises, but you can't expect to make a very good living by owning one. Right? So everything's relative. If you go for the least expensive, by the way, I don't like to use the word cheap, right? It makes something sound very substandard. So I like to, for lack of a better term, I like to use least expensive or inexpensive. So yes, the least expensive or inexpensive franchise, one of them, it happens to be Subway. But in order for you to make a good living, you need to own at least 3 of them.
Wow.
Yes.
What is a good living? $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month?
That's pretty subjective. You're right. I would say you will earn approximately $45,000 for each Subway that you own
Per year?
per year. That's what you're left with once everything's said and done.
After you pay rent, the franchise fees,
All
and
your
everything.
operational expenses, correct. Average, again, I'm giving you the average now.
Right.
It varies from store to store, from territory to territory.
So if you only have one store, basically, hopefully you're making $40,000 a year, which is not that much.
Hopefully, you can survive a lifestyle that will bring you 45. That brings you 45,000 a year. No, it's not, and it's not easy to run a Subway. The hours are very, very long. There's a lot of competition from cafes who also sell sandwiches and submarines. It's a tough business, but people, because they see that there has the most number of outlets in the world, they figure, wow, this must be an incredible business. Everybody wants to be in. Well, people who think about franchise and haven't done much research, it's their default franchise system to go to, because it's also the least expensive.
Are there some Quebec-based or Canada-based franchises that are as cheap or even cheaper than Subway?
No, in fact, they're all getting expensive now. To buy into a franchise, you're looking at the average of about $40,000, and then you have to have X amount of money to invest for the leasehold improvement, or for the property and the equipment and the ingredients and the training. So you're looking at an average of about $250,000 for a friend to get into a reasonable priced franchise.
To get into your first franchise.
Correct. Yes.
Is entrepreneurship for everybody?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it takes a certain criteria to be able to go into business for oneself. And I wrote the list over here. You have to have passion, willingness to fail, critical thinking skills, excellent communication skills, and you also have to have a growth mindset.
You wrote that, and you didn't even know I was going to ask you that question. Amazing. I like it.
That's important. Those are important. That's why I had to bring it up.
Could you repeat them again, please, for the
Sure,
audience?
absolutely. So you need to have passion for the type of product or service that you're going to be offering. You have to have a growth mindset. You have to be able to take risks, right? Because there's no guarantee when you start a business. And you need to have good communication skills, because you're going to be dealing with customers, eventually employees and suppliers.
You go all the way in, or as most of us, and I don't know if you have done that yourself, but should we, let's say, keep our jobs while we develop our ideas?
Definitely. In fact, I wrote that in one of the LinkedIn posts. Somebody wrote a posting about what it took him to start a business, and he went through the grind, and now he's doing well, but he had to make a lot of sacrifices. And then I commented and I said, people, they get the wrong idea. They think that you have to tell your boss that you are quitting to start your business from scratch. You never do that. You have the best of both worlds. You keep your employer, and because you need to pay the bills, right?
Right.
And if you have a family, ever so important. And then you start the business on the side. Once you can grow that business to the point where you can match or even surpass the income you're making at work, then it's time for you to walk away from your employer. But I wouldn't recommend quitting your job, your day job, or evening job to run your business full time. There are two schools of thought. Some entrepreneurship experts say that if you're serious about running a business, starting and running a business, forget about working elsewhere. You need to put in 100%. But not everybody is able to do that. realistically, not everyone's, I know not everyone has millions of dollars sitting in the bank where they can collect from the investment or, interest to be able to continue paying their bills while they're running their business full time. So that's why for me, the most realistic scenario is to start the business and grow it methodically until you get to the point where it's time to take it to the next level, which means you have to quit your job or hire somebody or bring in a partner who's willing to go in with you, and split the schedule in such a way that it's flexible enough for you to be able to work and to run the business. So while you're running the business, while you're at work, your partner is running the business, and if the business remains open after you work, then you can take over from your partner.
Or maybe, just to add an idea here, maybe you are very good at saving money. You can probably save 1 year worth of salary, and then you decide to embark yourself in this idea. If it doesn't work, then you go back to the job market.
As long as you don't burn your bridges before you start your business.
You don't want to do that. That's
Right?
true. That's true.
And did you know what the statistics are for business failures? I think it's important for your audience to know this.
It is important, and I wanted to ask you that. So,
Sure.
What are the statistics?
So the statistics show that, and I'm talking about Canada-wide now. Canada-wide, 21.5% of small businesses, okay, they fold before the end of the first year.
Wow.
So if you round it off, let's say 22%. And about 50% of small businesses survive for 5 years.
And after 5 years, they fail?
And a third get to celebrate 10 years in business. How about that?
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting, because when we think about long-standing businesses in North America, we think about 100 years, which is long, right? But not that crazy when we consider that in Japan, there was a company that was running for 1,400 years or so. So basically, after 1 year, 5 years,
22% in the first year, 50% within the first 3 to 5 years, and then the 1/3 will celebrate 10 years in the business.
even at 10 years, they would disappear. After 10 years, they will fail.
No, they'll continue,
Okay.
but meaning that at least they'll be able to celebrate the 10th year. It doesn't mean that after 10 years they're gone.
Good. At least they get to that point. They get to celebrate. Perfect.
That's right. Yeah.
James,
Yes.
because you're teaching this class, where should people go if they wanted to take this business entrepreneurship related class with you?
The English and French school boards, for that matter, since we're in Quebec, they have the starting a business program in their vocational centers. The one I teach is for the Lester B. Pearson School Board, and the name of the vocational center, which is in Pierrefonds on the West Island, is called the West Island Career Center, also known by its acronym WICC, W-I-C-C. And it's not a full-time, daytime program. It's basically 1 day a week, and it's usually either a Saturday or a Sunday from 9 to 3.
And
it's for 5 months.
There are assignments, 5 months, and
Yes.
it's actually very cheap because it is supported by the government.
Again,
correct?
I wouldn't use the word cheap. It's inexpensive. Yes, it won't cost you more than it's heavily
You got me.
subsidized. No, it's heavily subsidized by the government, by the Quebec government. So you're looking at paying no more than just your fee, registration fee, which maybe is about $200. But in reality, this course is worth about $5,000. If a private institution was offering this, it would charge it between $2,500 to $5,000.
Like if you were to go to Concordia, McGill, or Any?
No. If you were to go to a private institution such as I'll throw in I don't know, Herzing, Trebas, they would charge you a lot more money for sure.
So we have a question from the audience. James, what's the most promising type of business within the next 5 years?
Which is the most promising business? It would be, normally it's the disruptors. A business was disrupts the status quo. I mean, when you look at Tesla, for example, right, disrupted the car industry. You're looking at other industries that also disrupted the status quo. But of course, not everybody can find a business that they can disrupt, right? It's usually one in a million. But as a business, anything in the health sector, anything to do with health, anything to do with beauty, right? Because people love to keep themselves looking good,
Sure.
especially women, right? And anything to do with services. I prefer a service type of business versus one which you're buying and trading intangibles. Because a service, you don't have to worry about stock. You don't have to worry about expiry dates, right?
Sure.
You don't need a warehouse. You're basically exchanging what you're offering. You're solving a problem, right? In exchange for revenues.
Correct. How about businesses that have to do with kids? Those are pretty good most of the time.
Daycare is a fantastic business. For example, there's always going to be a need for that. You would like to go into a business where people, you don't have to chase people, right?
You
People
want
come
them
to
you want them to come to you, correct?
Exactly.
That's true.
Right. So if you want to open up a restaurant, make sure it's a restaurant that offers something, a unique experience that not everybody else is offering, right?
Let me share this with you. I just went to a conference, and apparently there's a restaurant. I don't know exactly where it is, but someone came up with the idea of actually throwing the bread to the people. They would not pass with the bread and just place the bread on your plate. They would actually have a cart, stop somewhere in a corner, and throw the bread to people. And it's full. It's full all the time because it's a different experience. So you're right. Maybe you have to come up with something that's different.
It has to be different, and it has to be, and you have to think about a way that you won't have to be competing directly with your competitors. A good example of that would be Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil, right? Instead of bringing in the animals and having a traditional circus, they decided, Guy Laliberté, the founder, decided to do away with it and offer something more artistic, right? Which would draw in more sophisticated audience who are willing to pay over $100 per ticket and spend 2.5 hours drifting away from their daily problems.
For life, right? Yes.
Correct.
So we have another question. When does your next course start?
It actually started last weekend. And the next one after that is going to be, I believe, at the end of the year or beginning in January. So the best thing to do is to call in this particular case, it depends where you live. If you live in Montreal, you can go to SHAD, which is an NDG. That vocational center offers starting a business several times a year. Or you can come to my vocational center, which is the West Island Career Center. And by the way, you don't have to come into, it's a hybrid, but most of it is online. This is the other beauty.
So that makes it way easier for people to register.
That's right.
Very good. Even though it started this past weekend, do you think people could still join the class? Or
there is a possibility. Again, they will have to call the West Island Career Center and find out if they're still willing to take on people, additional students.
Very good. We have another question here. What's your opinion on a digital marketing company?
That is the future, and the future is now. So most definitely, if you can offer digital services because they're in high demand, that's a good business. If you have a specific expertise or knowledge, I highly recommend that you apply it and monetize it.
Very good. I have a question. This is coming from me to you. What do you think about MLMs, multi-level marketing?
I'm totally against that. It's a
Why?
scam. It's a scam.
It is a scam. Tell me more
Yes.
about it. I want to hear everything you have to say
Well,
about it.
The only people who it's mathematically proven that the only people who are making money are the 5% on the top. The 95% below have either broken even or lost money, because don't forget, you have to buy into, right? It doesn't come for free. You have to buy the products or the services and then try to resell them. But it's not about buying and selling. The money, the business model for an MLM is basically it has based on recruiting. The more people you recruit underneath you, and the more people the people underneath you recruit underneath them and recruit underneath them, right? That's what they call a pyramid. The more money the people will be making in the top. So the losers are the 95%. And if I want to be more generous, I'd say, okay, 90%. It's
But
still
what
a high number.
about those MLMs that actually have products that they offer to people and they're good products?
Those are overpriced products. You can find them much cheaper on Amazon.
Are they the same quality?
I have a friend of mine who's been with Amway for ages, and he offered me supplements, for example, as an example, just for starters, right? Because I take several supplements a day. Thank goodness I don't take any medication. And he said, these are all natural, they're high quality, this and that. You should try them and tell me if you're ready to place an order. I tried them. I didn't see anything. I didn't feel any different from the ones that I'm buying now. And they were, between 40 and 60% more expensive. I'm asking myself, for what?
There are some success stories.
Few, very,
but
very few.
I agree.
Very few. Yes.
So instead of joining an MLM, you recommend people to think about a business idea,
That's right.
write the business plan, and take action.
Otherwise, you're taking somebody's business model, which exists, and you're making that person very wealthy.
I like the way you think about it. Yes. Okay. Well, some people say, well, this is the best way to get into a business because memberships are very cheap. Well, again, they're not very expensive.
It's a lot of hype. MLMs are a lot of hype, right? There's very charismatic people that they hire on purpose to do a dog and pony show, so they can get you all stirred up and excited, emotionally excited to get in. And then the next thing you know is you're going to be asking your friends and your relatives, right? You're going to try to drag them into it as well. And then you fail and they fail. And then you lose your friends and relatives. How about that?
Yeah,
get into a real business, ladies and gentlemen.
A real business. Good.
A real business.
So Thomas Raymond from your class is very glad to see you. And he likes what you think about digital marketing, by the way. And he's here in the chat participating. So Thomas Raymond from your class.
Greetings.
Okay, so what's your advice for someone that's going to start a business? Would you give like one advice, 3 pieces of advice? How would people go about starting their business, especially as immigrants?
The first thing you need to you need to come up with a clean sheet of paper and write down the following. What is it that I would like to do, which will keep me happy day in, day out, right? And do good for my potential customers, right? Because selling drugs, for example, right? It's not, you can make money, but yeah, it's not doing good for the people, right? You're going to be killing your clients.
Correct.
Second question is, do I want to get into a product or services? Third, how much money do I have to invest? And usually the bank will lend you up to 70% of the total cost of your project. So for example, if your business is going to cost you 100,000 in your business plan, you need to have at least 25 to 30% of your own funds going in. And the balance will be will be financed by the bank.
Okay.
And the third question is, do I want to start from scratch? Do I want to buy into a proven system called a franchise? Or do I want to buy an existing business, which is very well established, and I can go in and even make more money?
Very good. I like the approach that you took to answer that question. Where can people reach you at?
Okay. I highly recommend that they go into my blog, where they can also find my information as to how they can contact me. Okay, and there they can get a lot of juicy information regarding entrepreneurship.
Your blog is on LinkedIn?
I believe that the blog is in LinkedIn, yes. But I've had it since 2009. And since then, I've had a lot of many visitors every month, without giving out specifics. And I write about 1 or 2 articles a month, which I post, and they're all my articles. So you get firsthand information coming from me. So the name of the blog is theboldbusinessexpert.com.
Excellent.
Or they can go into my LinkedIn profile. I'll be more than happy to connect with them, whereby it should be there. If not, they can reach out to me, and I'll provide them with the information they're requesting.
Very good. James, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I've learned a lot from you. I'm looking forward to sharing more with you outside of this interview and the podcast, and continue learning. If we stop learning, we die, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, education is perpetual, right?
That is correct.
That's right. Well, in other words, we're still learning.
That is correct. And for the audience, please share this interview with your friends, family members,
Absolutely.
and acquaintances. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet. James, thank you very much.
Robinson, thank you very much for the invitation. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Ciao.